I don't remember once the station boasting and having an on-air campaign saying, this song is about us, and bragging. That wasn't...
It was never done.
It was never done. And that's David, I think, too. He didn't want to boast, and he was very respectful of the other stations, didn't want to shove it in their face, Q107, fuck you, this song's about us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So David was very good that way. And so maybe that's where some of the story that people didn't know that the station was the subject of that song. So maybe that's part of it.
In 1974, 3 Canadian musicians decided to make their shared love for each other and for the hard-edged, progressive music they'd grown up listening to and emulating official. They called themselves Rush. More than 50 years later, that shared love has birthed a legacy that has endured and continues to grow. Welcome to the Why Rush Matters podcast. I'm Jeff Myers, a musician, music journalist, and, since a fateful evening in January of 1980, a devout Rush fan, aficionado, and on my best days, scholar.
And I'm Ray Wozniak. Since late 1981, I've been writing my PhD on Rush. That 15-year-old Rush fan that forever lives inside of me knows that there are others out there like Jeff and I. With Why Rush Matters, music fans who have not yet been introduced to Rush might be inspired to unpack their music. Or, in the case of veteran Rush fans, Jeff and I hope you might revisit overlooked songs or albums within their catalog. With the help of guests, with our own collective experience, and even some cool memorabilia, Jeff and I hope to educate, to celebrate, and to share a few laughs along the way. Welcome to Why Rush Matters.
Why Rush Matters, part of the Pantheon Media family, can be heard or viewed wherever you stream your podcasts. Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Why Rush Matters. Your host, Jeff Myers, musician, music journalist, Rush nerd. I'm here with my co-host, Ray Wozniak. We've got some special guests today, but let me preface it by saying the theme of today's episode is the spirit of radio, not just the song, but the backstory, the radio station, the mighty CFNY, which is being celebrated with a new documentary, which will be coming to Buffalo and hopefully be available to a lot of people across this country as well. But anyway, Ray, would you like to
Jeff, good day to you.
Introduce our friend?
Happy to be here. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to those at the studio. And holy cow, traveling internationally, our first guest here for the podcast. He was willing to cross international borders to be with us. CFNY alum, Universal Music Canada alum, an incredible musical resume with some stories that will inspire so many of our viewers today. Ivar Hamilton, holy cow, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for traveling. Thanks for being here with us to talk about this CFNY documentary. And joining us as well virtually, Ivar's CFNY colleagues, counterparts with a resume probably just as long as Ivar's in the field. Liz Janik, good day to you. Thank you so much for being here today, Liz.
Hi, Liz.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Scott Turner, good day to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott, Liz, Ivar. As Jeff introduced, there's an exciting new documentary that will be making its, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll be making its American debut?
Yes. And this is happening fairly soon. And I don't want to let too much out of the bag on it, but it's going to be with PBS. And PBS here in Buffalo and wider across the U.S. It's something that we dreamed about, as well as we're going to do something at the town ballroom.
Yes.
But we been working behind the scenes for probably the better part of 2 years to see if there's something that could be done on broadcast television in the U.S., and it's going to happen. So more details to come. I can't let a lot of it out yet, but it's happening. I'm so thrilled because we've had so many people ask about this documentary. Could it be shown in the U.S.? We are also going to make the merchandise available from the Spirit of Radio in the U.S. as well, because we had lots of people say, "Hey, you don't ship across the border." And I said, "Well, we're going to find a way to make it available for our U.S. friends, because they mean so much to us, and Buffalo means so much to us, as it did to CFNY back in the day." And Liz, I don't know if you want to jump in on that, because you were a big part of what we did in Buffalo with our CFNY days too.
Well, all I know about, if you're talking back in the day when we were broadcasting,
Yes.
people called from Buffalo because our signal only went west of Toronto. So we could get to St. Catharines, Hamilton, Niagara Falls, and we made it all the way down to Buffalo. And there had been a station, a freeform progressive station, I think, in Buffalo before that, going back into the early 70s, I think. Was it John McGann, I think, is the guy that ran that station. It's a very exciting freeform station.
Yes. And so the idea of freeform radio had an appeal here, and we had strong college radio in WBNY. But I do think that CFNY had a huge effect on shaping the musical culture of Buffalo, particularly for my generation, Gen X, whatever the hell we need to be called. But when I moved here in 1990 to join that music scene, CFNY was pervasive here, and the signal was very strong, and we all listened to it. And people that became my best friends, and ultimately my wife included, that I met, we bonded around the station. And there were clubs here where it was basically, downstairs live band, upstairs basically CFNY playlists that everybody danced to, so people here knew about Depeche Mode, New Order, even The Cure and the Smiths because of the station. So it's huge. And, I say this all the time. By the way, thank you for talking to us, even though we're the ugly Americans at present. But, we love Canada, man. And I've never felt anything but love going both ways, especially through music.
We celebrated that relationship in episode 1 for sure, to lay the groundwork of our love for our Canadian brethren.
It's significant.
Yes.
But go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to jump into what Liz was saying, and that's very, very true, those early days. So this is pre-83, before the CN Tower. So I grew up in Scarborough, and, that's discussed in the documentary too, that a bunch of us in Scarborough in the evenings, it was a little better, and the weekends weren't too bad, but daytime was terrible. You just couldn't hear the station. So there was this affinity between the Golden Horseshoe area, Western New York, connected to the station before half of Toronto did. So
it's crazy,
pre-83. So you got to remember that, right? It's a great story.
Ivar, you mentioned something about 2 years ago. You were considering how you can have this broadcast in what hopefully will end up being PBS. But can you go farther back than that yourself, or Scott or Liz? Can you go back to the seed that was planted in which somebody had an idea to say, let's do a documentary on CFNY? When was that seed first planted?
So it was Alan Cross and I, and we were taking a trip together out to Winnipeg to see the Pixies when they reunited for the first time.
Awesome.
And so we were going to the Burton Cummings Theater out there to see the Pixies, and we're sitting together on the plane, and all of a sudden we saw something about, we had just heard about a documentary that had come out about the Big Eight, and I don't know if you guys know what the Big Eight is. It was a top 40 station out of Windsor.
Oh no!
But it had huge impact into Detroit, and it was programmed by a woman named Rosalie Tremblay, who Bob Seger wrote the song Rosalie, and Thin Lizzy did the song.
You're kidding me.
That's the radio station.
That's Rosalie.
That's Rosalie, right? And so Rosalie, they had this documentary on the radio station, and it was like, and all the Motown acts came over from Detroit who'd never been on TV, but the CKLW had a television affiliate. So all of a sudden it was a big deal. Elton John came over. Like all of these huge American stars came over, and there's this documentary on the Big Eight. It was okay. It wasn't great, but we got us thinking about, okay, what about CFNY? And then there was a documentary, 2 other ones, one on WLIR out of New York, which was okay, also not bad, knew those guys, and like, all right. And then there was one that was a real low budget one, WHTG out of New Jersey. Probably done for $10,000 or something, but they did it. And we're sitting there going, can we swear in this podcast?
Absolutely.
So why the fuck don't we have one on CFNY? And then on top of that, the Boat That Rocked, which was pirate radio.
Right.
I think it was pirate radio in the U.S., the Boat That Rocked overseas, based on Radio Caroline, which was the pirate station broadcasting out of the North Sea.
That's an amazing story.
Now, I lived in the UK from 75 to 76 and listened to Radio Caroline and heard the most amazing music on that radio station. And all similar to like CFNY, but whenever a record skipped because of the the waves or whatever, it was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And then at CFNY, records skip because mice would spin around on the turntable. So we thought there's got to be a way for us to make a documentary about the radio station. There's a huge we felt that there was a huge listenership that would want to know about it, and another generation to do that. So Alan Cross and I started.
That was when, Ivar, if I can interrupt, excuse me.
It's probably...
You went to Winnipeg for that Pixie show.
I'm going to say it's probably about 12 to 13 years ago.
Okay.
That would
it's
be
quite some time ago.
Pixies reunion time.
Yeah.
So
that's where it started.
And again, Scott, you can jump in because Scott and I have talked about on our podcast that sometimes we tell the same story with different stories in it, or different ways of telling that story. Sometimes the years get mixed up. We apologize for that. But the genesis of it was a decade plus proposition to try and find some people that believed in it and some people that we could get backing on it. And so that kind of went on for 6 or 7 years. We talked to various people. And the other executive producers that we had out, so it was Scott, myself, and Alan Cross, and the 2 other people were in the film business. One who'd had a history with Vice, and the other one who's based in Nashville, and she'd done all sorts of documentaries, including this new one that's coming out on Ann Wilson of Heart. She's the executive producer on that, and she's done some other ones that have won some awards. So they managed to finally pull something together. But I got to tell you, when it happened, we got a director, Matt Schichter. He'd never done a documentary before. He'd never been a director before, right? And so, here's us radio guys had never done a documentary before, working with 2 people as executive producers. So yeah, they knew some things, and they knew some people, but so once that started and they said, well, we're going to film, and I brought Scott in because Scott and I knew each other forever, and Scott's being a great organizer for looking back on the years and research and, things that happened and things that we needed to talk about. So he brought it in, he came into it, and then we started filming. Scott, what was it, end of 22, I think it was. November of 22, and it basically went on for about a year, maybe even longer. But we filmed in Toronto at the El Macombo, and then we filmed all around the Golden Horseshoe. Then we went to Las Vegas. We were in Los Angeles, Vancouver, London, Manchester. Then they ran out of money.
Wow. Well, it's a pretty good run until you ran out of money.
They went to a lot of different places. We never went to any of those places.
Well, I was going to say, Alan got to do most of it. Yeah. He was the guy, we got cut out of the budget, so Alan got to do all the fancy places and tripped, I'm
like after that, I'm going, hey, Alan, were you flying at the front of the plane? Or were you in the back? Or what kind of hotel? Like, Scott and I wanted to know, like, what's going on with these things, right? And I will say, just if I connected to Rush, And Scott can back me up on this. I was like a bull in a fucking china shop. I said, this fucking film is not getting made unless Rush is in it.
Yeah.
It's not, the spirit of radio cannot be the spirit of radio without Rush, hands down.
Yeah, and you know what? To credit to Barb and Chantel, the other executive producers that actually knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
were really helpful because they were looking for, and at the beginning we were looking for an international story. You know, we know that it was a very, very Toronto, and Buffalo could get the story because they were connected. But beyond that, there was a lot of discussion about how do we make this internationally appealing,
right?
And of course, the connection with the spirit of radio, and Rush was like, boom, okay, now we got something, right? And that was part of that made it a bigger story.
Yeah. And
perfect.
So that's kind of where the Rush connection came to play on that. And we pushed and somebody says, well, I'm going to call Anthem, and I'm going to call the head of Anthem. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. But here's what I know who to call. I know what to do on this, and so it took forever to get that done. But we also had Stephen Page from Bare Naked Ladies was in there. We got Peter Hook from New Order, Jim Kerr, Simple
huge.
Minds. I mean, pretty. If you've taken a look at the documentary, we got a pretty big list of people in that documentary, plus all of the things that didn't make the documentary, and then of course once we took this out on the road in Canada, and we had first had it shown on TVO. We had a whole bunch of listeners reach out to us, emailed us, text us, going, "Hey, you missed a whole bunch of stuff. We could watch a whole bunch more of this stuff." Mm-hmm. And so there's the film company, love them. Fabulous people, great relationship, and they said, "Yeah, we can do that, but you guys got to pay for it."
Right.
I said, "Okay." So we put our money where our mouths are, and shelled out of our own savings to put this extended version together. And lo and behold, we've got a 90-minute version that truly gave people what they wanted. And then once this Blu-ray and DVD that's out in Canada now has about a dozen extras on it.
Will people be able to get this?
Yes.
Here?
Yeah, we're going to do our best to make sure that it's available as well. There is an extended. I was going to say, go ahead, Scott.
Just to be clear on the extras, it is one of the extras is an extended version of the Geddy Lee interview. Is it the entire interview? I can't remember.
It's not the entire interview, but it's a good portion thereof.
Is this a new interview with Geddy?
It's the same interview that he did for the documentary, but like any film, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours that are on the cutting room floor. So they went through it. Scott and I were tasked.
Meant it wasn't an archival interview.
It was not. It was a newer interview. It's the same interview was done at the El Macombo that was done for the film. It just, the parts that didn't make it into the film, we managed to take pieces out, and it made it into the extras. Now, the way that these extras were unfolded or put together was we didn't have access to the film. We only had access to the scripts. So we were sent scripts that were done through AI, which was quite interesting because a lot of stuff, as you know, gets lost in translation in AI. So, for example, Stephen Page is talking in the film, and he's talking about. He's supposed to be talking about CFNY, but what did he say, Scott? It was something to.
I try to remember
something about red wine or something. It was like CFNY became red wine, and we're like, what is he talking about? Anyway, so we had all of these extra transcripts that we went through and said, okay, this is what needs to be in for Geddy. This is what needs to be in for promoter Gary Top, Men Without Hats, whatever else that was in there. So it was quite the process to do it, but in the end, we were really happy with the way that it turned out.
Okay, a couple things, if I may. Was it Alan who conducted the interview with Geddy, or was that yourself or Scott or Liz?
It was Alan did the interview with Geddy. on that. Alan Cross did do the interview with Geddy. I was still gainfully employed by Universal Music at the time, and because it was an outside film production, one of my hands was tied behind my back, so I wasn't able to be there for that particular interview.
You were adamant in saying that if this film was going to be done, we have to have the inclusion of Rush.
Absolutely. 100%.
I'm sure there were other bands and artists that you felt if we're going to tell the story of the history of CFNY, the story would be incomplete if we didn't have Rush and if we didn't have bands and artists A and B and C. Who might some of those other artists have been that you thought were key to telling the story?
Well, I mean, certainly New Order was was super key to us. I mean, a couple of the bands that didn't make it in that we really wanted was one was Depeche Mode. That we really was like, it just never happened. The English Beat was also one that we felt was really important, and we weren't able to get them in. But I mean, to have Simple Minds in there, Jim Kerr of Simple Minds was probably one of the most important bands that we had outside of Rush on there. New Order was of paramount importance, and Peter Hook spoke to the fact that the biggest show the band ever played outside in their career and in North America was in Toronto, and because of CFNY.
And it's true. It's in the documentary. It's incredible.
Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And then the Canadian bands that were in there, Teenage Head, Michelle from Parachute Club, Scott, we got Billy Talent, Sum 41 for the later years in there as well. Certainly Bare Naked Ladies playing a big part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to jump back. I did find out, remember we were looking at those scripts, the AI version of the scripts, and I kept seeing this Sea of Red Wine.
That's it. Sea of Red Wine.
Okay, there.
And I'm like, what is that? And then I figured out, it's CFNY. And AI.
Sea of Red Wine and AI.
That is hilarious.
True story. That's really what it was. Yeah.
Somebody's got to steal that for a song title now. It's too good. Rush, lending perhaps a connection to a more international vibe and audience for the documentary. It was always really interesting to me that Rush, right? I mean, a lot of what I've heard on CFNY was new wave, punk. Rush now, and I don't like these descriptives, but I understand they're considered a classic rock band, right? Not always what hip people loved, yet somehow they make perfect sense for this, obviously because of the song, and we should talk about that a bit. But I also think that Rush, just like CFNY, defined what progressive actually means. CFNY was birthed as a progressive station, right? Meaning free form, had the audacity to hire DJs, pay them, and say, you're the expert. What do you want to play? Play what you're into and what you're passionate about and what you have knowledge of, and share it with people. And at least for a while, nobody was messing with that, right? Because it worked. It's a similar story to Rush to me, because, once they had a hit with 2112, no A&R people showed up at the studio anymore. It was like, let the weirdos be weird and see what they create. So to me, there's a parallel there. I might be reaching, but I do see it.
Yeah, I don't think any A&R people ever showed up to anything to do with Rush. Certainly not in Canada.
Yeah.
And I know that for a fact in Canada, because Rush always ran their own show in Canada. They were not signed outright to Mercury in Canada. It was always this, Anthem Records was always an independent. And Rush paid for everything out of their own pocket. It was all of their own dollars. So it wasn't the big machine Mercury Records and later on Atlantic and Universal Music Enterprises. It was always Rush's money in Canada. So whenever a Rush album would come out, there would always be like, hey, we should do these radio buys and these TVs and all these events. And they're like, well, and it's like they were tight with the pocketbooks, but for the right reason. And I think certainly in later years, people just need to know there's something from Rush coming out. And we know that the fan base, they move there in a big way. Right?
Absolutely.
So, but anyway, I mean, the whole thing with Rush, and again, this is for, our American friends, and I want to stress this is because, the common thread is Donna Halpern, MMS. Love her to death, and she's a wonderful woman. Absolutely.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Right? But
There's more to the story.
the very first person to ever play Rush on the radio ever was David Marsden of CFNY.
Nice.
Now, I will put a caveat to that. It was not on CFNY because CFNY did not hit the airwaves at 100,000 watts until July of 1977.
Was it Chum FM?
It was on Chum FM.
Amazing.
And
Finding my way.
David used to have a great relationship with Ray Daniels. And David in the early days also had his own production studio doing jingles for bands, jingles for haircut, a place called the House of Lords in Toronto, a number of other places. And David used to do all of Rush's commercials as well. Now, I confirmed through Alex that David was the first person to ever play Rush. And I think that was because Alex would call David on the request line when that first album came out and said, "Can you play us?" And I think also, but he had that relationship with Ray as well. And David also, in those early days when Rush were scraping the bottom, like playing high schools in these little bars, they didn't have a lot of money. They were just holding it together. And so David didn't even take any money for any of those spots for many years. And then when, Rush finally was able to put money into their pockets, and it was all paid back in spades more than ever. But he was always grateful for having David there. So there was always, from the get-go, there was a special relationship.
That's a great connection.
David was the one, correct me if I'm wrong, David was the one who coined the phrase for CFNY. Correct me, Liz. Correct me, Scott. Correct me, Ivar. David was the one who coined the phrase "the spirit of radio."
Yes, and I turn it over to Liz and Scott, and then we're all going to tell a slightly different story. So
okay,
you guys
great.
go.
Liz, please.
Yeah, I want to hear
David
it.
actually talks about how he finally came to that conclusion. He was just driving along one day, and those words came to him, and he was quite taken with it. And he says in the movie that there were three things that represent the spirit of radio. One is it was about love. Like the vibe of the station was friendly and warm, and there was none of that bitterness we hear nowadays.
Yeah.
Second part was music, that we all loved music, the DJs and the audience. And so there was such a passion for consuming and exploring music. We're what I call now music active people. We love music so much, even though we're over 25, we're still following new music. I mean, I listen to new music. I don't listen to classic anything really. And so that love of music was a big glue between us. And the third thing that he brought up was that the station allowed multiple viewpoints. There wasn't just one narrative.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is a group of creative free thinkers that are drawn together because they're good in their hearts and they love music. And that's what the spirit of radio meant to him. And some people think that the station was named after the song, but it was the other way around.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
They still think that today. Some do.
All those youngsters.
We have to reinforce it on.
We have to educate everybody.
on a
Yeah,
regular
we need
basis.
to disabuse people of that notion because
I was going to say too, so I've asked David a couple of times, and at one point, and I said, David, where did the spirit of radio come from? And the story that I got, it was taken from the Spirit of St. Louis, from the the Charles Lindbergh thing. But that was a long time ago. So, and every once in a while you'll see the interviews from bands that they tell the story a little bit differently. So that one's always kind of stuck in the back of my mind. It doesn't make any difference to me so much because what Liz said really sort of backs up the what it really was about behind the scenes, and the spirit of radio has this meaning, and the lyrics to the song really kind of carry the meaning of what the spirit of radio was well described. The only counterpart to that song as a counterweight is the little station band. I don't know if you guys know, but this is a station band called the 102.1 band, a song called Working on the Radio, which finishes the documentary. Rush opens it up, and the 102.1 band finish it up. So between those two songs, they really describe what the spirit of radio really was to us back in that era.
That's amazing. Liz, that was beautiful the way you said that, and I think it shows, and that's probably what people are still wanting to connect to, because
definitely there was almost a magical quality about the station. And let me give you one example. A couple went to a dance club, and they kept bugging the DJ to play these two songs, and he didn't. Then they came home and they were listening to the all night show, and they tried to get through to me to play these two songs, and they never got through. So they gave up. They sat down on the couch, and then I played those two songs back to back.
wow.
So they called again and got through, and they told me that story. And every time I tell stories like that, because there's so many, where I get goosebumps, because there was something a little in the invisible world realm that kept us together.
Something in the ether. That's really cool.
So of course, there's the famous story about Permanent Waves, the album on which all of our listeners know the spirit of radio appears on that record.
Yes.
And as an ode to the importance that CFNY played to the band in their lives, not necessarily while they were recording the album, but while they were recording the album, but just in the course of their lives, CFNY was important to the band, Rush as well. So important that they had a member of the band themselves deliver Permanent Waves to CFNY.
Yes.
Ivar, Liz, Scott, who wants to feel?
Well, I was there for it, so I'd like like to take that one,
please,
and everybody else can jump in. And so, what was happening prior to that? Every time a new Rush record came out, it would be premiered on Chum FM, and rightfully so, from the history that they had before that. But once David Marsden came in and took over from CFNY and was what he was doing there, we were playing a lot of Rush at the time, and then we had an idea that the band were listening to the radio station, but we didn't know an awful lot about it. And of course, with any record, when we talked off air before we started here, Bruce Moser here in Buffalo, promo guys, and the people at the label, they would go out and deliver the records. Yeah, not a problem. And so I don't know what day of the week it was. I just recall that I was the only person there, and maybe the receptionist at the time was there, and it was all of a sudden, it was nobody from Anthem Records. It was, what's Neil Peart doing in our parking lot? So Neil Peart walks in with an advanced copy of the album, advanced finished copy of this record of Permanent Waves, and said, we made this for you, and hands me the record. And I'll never forget it. I will never, ever forget it. And of course, Spirit of Radio on it, and the other thing that totally blew us away, and they had to play politics on this record because of Chum FM and Q107 in Toronto, and they all did things and both those radio stations played a lot of Rush too, but our music cut through to Rush and was highly influential on them in those days. And you open up the record, you pull the vinyl out, and the catalog number is Anthem 1021.
It's so cool.
And so that to me was like, it doesn't get any better.
And it's etched into the vinyl.
It's etched into the vinyl, the 1021 catalog number. And it also says at the bottom, the Spirit of Radio alive and well in Toronto. Didn't say CFNY. And they told David Marsden prior to that, before the album was delivered, said, hey, we got this record. There's something special on it for you guys. We can't put the station's call letter on it, but of course, by them saying in the liner notes, the Spirit of Radio is alive and well, and a 1021 catalog number, that was phenomenal.
Well, and all the publicity and all the press that they did thereafter, they're open about the fact that Alive and Well so far is an ode to CFNY. Liz, you were nodding as Ivar was telling that incredible story. You've got some other anecdotes you want to add on to that, please. Go ahead.
Well, I'm curious, Ivar, was it you that interviewed him then?
It was not me. I think it was All Night Andre. I'm pretty sure, because in the film,
Andre Tilk,
because Andre in the film is the one who's talking to them, talking to Geddy in the film. So I can only imagine it. Now, the other person who could be a part of it who we need to drill down on a little bit more could be Tim Keel, because Tim did about 500 interviews between 1980 and 1982. And we just recently got a list of everybody he talked to.
Wow.
So, and that interview, fingers crossed, may exist. We're doing a book, by the way. So this whole documentary, we're all retired now. At least Scott and I are retired. It was keep the flame going. We started our own podcast, Music Milestones YYZ, or in our neck of the woods, I heard Geddy go YYZ.
Yeah.
And now we're doing a book. There's a book scheduled for Q4 in 2027.
Amazing.
And this is to keep telling the stories that didn't make it in the movie, and because there's so much to talk about.
There is.
And share.
Well, that interview changed my whole life, because I was the all-night chick, so that means I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a day, because I was also a new mom.
Oh,
So
wow. At the same time.
So I was at home, and this interview comes on, and I was questioning my choice about choosing to be a DJ, because we were really not paid well. That's the kindest way I can put that. And I had come from a more lucrative career. And so I'm listening to the interview, and he described why he chose to write that song. And it was a scenario where he was coming home after either a recording session or a gig. And he was listening to the station, and he was coming across the escarpment, the one that gives us the Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And as he crested the escarpment, he had this amazing view of the Golden Horseshoe, that whole urban land below it. The lyrics of the song, one of those magical moments, the lyrics of the song from Genesis matched what he was seeing. And that's what inspired him to write the song.
So cool.
It was so synchronous.
Cool.
So synchronous.
Watcher of the Skies, right, Liz? It was Watcher of the Skies.
And there I am at home, and I'm thinking to myself, then whoever was interviewing said, "Oh, you must have been listening to the All Night Andre." And he said, "No, I was listening to that woman." That would only be
amazing.
You're famously known now as that woman.
That woman. So
should have introduced her that way.
And I realized that the first line in the lyric, beginning the day with a friendly voice.
Yeah.
There you go.
That would be me.
How
that's
cool.
you. Holy cow.
That's you, Liz. That's new. Ray, that's new. Right?
Can you, that is new to me. Liz, can you somehow virtually sign my copy of this album? Good Lord.
You can come to Brampton. You guys can come to Brampton next week.
All right.
Maybe he was writing begin the day with that woman. That doesn't sound
either.
Yeah, Geddy changed that one for you. Wow. Well, I mean, kudos to you for, and it's nice to be immortalized that way, I would imagine.
I thought it was pretty cool for about 3 years, and then I let it fly by, but here it is, 30 plus years. We still talk about that station.
It's amazing. Yeah. And Ivar, you mentioned something that was really interesting to me, and I was thinking about in preparing for today, that Rush were listening to CFNY. And I think on Permanent Waves, maybe you don't hear it. I think you're beginning to hear it. But the music they were hearing on CFNY had a radical effect on it. Opened their minds, and it changed the sound of Rush. And to me, I think Alex actually confirmed this to me once in an interview on the telephone. But I really think that as keyboards, new wave influences, etc., started to come more and more into their music in the 80s, you really saw the fruit of this effect that CFNY had on them.
The effect of their allegiance.
Well, we were trying to drill down on this a little more in this extras interview that's part of the documentary or on the the Blu-ray and DVD, and the one band that get centered out is Ultravox.
Yeah,
and this is and let me just clarify that though with an asterisk. We're not talking mid-years Ultravox. We're talking John Fox Ultravox. The first 3 records.
Yeah.
And if you listen to those records closely, yes, those keyboards are very prominent, but the guitars are really prominent
Totally.
there. You lose that afterwards on the mid-year
Vienna,
era,
etc.
That's all gone away. But if you listen to those Ultravox records, you're like,
You
wow,
really can hear that.
And there are a few other bands. I would hasten to guess Magazine was probably part of the mix for Rush, because that was the time frame as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, there's those two come to mind the most to me.
What about a band like Talking Heads? They would have been on the playlist. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Liz. I'm thinking about a typical CFNY playlist at the time that the band would have heard and have had that effect.
Yeah.
That
they
Jeff
would have heard. They
alluded
would
to.
have heard Ultravox and Magazine as well.
Definitely.
We've just been some discussion. Scott and I talked about Grace Jones. Even Grace Jones is very prominent in some of the rhythms and things in that, and certainly some of the things out of Talking Heads. And I might add that, like Rush, Talking Heads never made a bad record to me. I think every record of Talking Heads is fantastic, and
I agree with
the
you.
creativity that David Byrne has had over the years.
There haven't been any
phenomenal.
bad David Byrne solo albums
No,
either.
none of them, right? So,
and Tom Tom Club was also great.
yeah, I mean, it was sort of we're kind of going a little sideways here, but I mean,
No,
those
it's
are
cool.
a couple of the bands that really come to mind for me that they probably had some spent some good time with, and Wire is probably another one too, because they were pretty progressive. I mean, you've got these bands that came out of punk that were okay, they're just three chords and very, very simple, but were a handful of other ones that kind of moved into post-punk
Definitely.
that would have definitely become influential. Killing Joke is another one
question.
as well. So you kind of have this kind of bunch of these bands over here that kind of progressed after that, and I think Rush came along to the party with those.
Well said. All right, thank you for confirming what I kind of thought happened.
Ivar, your anecdote, if I may, excuse me, Liz, your anecdote, begin the day with a friendly voice. Ivar, you mentioned, hey Ray, that's a new story for you, and indeed, I've never heard that before. That line could be about Liz Janik. So here I am in the moment learning this. As the three of you were putting the documentary together, I'm sure there were things that you learned about CFNY that even though the three of you were embedded within the station for all those years, that you learned and only came to the surface during the course of the work in putting this together. What were some particular revelations from the three of you while you're putting this together?
Scott, do you want to jump in on that one?
Well, I just think the Allen brothers story, those early owners, I had heard stories around certain characters and those two guys who were a piece of work, and they would like, I think in the Chick AM days and Chick FM, I'd heard that, well, it's mostly Chick AM that was being rebroadcast on Chick FM before it became CFNY. Right. But I heard stories that they'd literally call up the DJ if they didn't like the record and tell them to take the record off, and they would fire guys and hire them back the next day. Those sort of crazy stories. But I didn't hear the whole Charlie Chaplin thing. I'd never heard that before. That was a crazy story, and that is discussed and explained in the documentary very well. So that was one story I had not heard. Liz, how about you?
Wow. Well, when you work nights, you don't see much going around the station during the day. So
that's right.
The whole thing where they arrested the Allen brothers and put them in jail was kind of not there for me. And then the move to the new station, I didn't get to see much of that either. Let me think.
Liz, you mentioned this because you were on our podcast, which you're going to be on next week, is that when we were at the Little Yellow House, is that you used to have listeners climb up the side of the building to try and get in the building to get their requests on the air. I never knew that prior to this week. Now
there was a little shed at the back underneath the bathroom window, so they'd climb on top of the shed and then they'd come up to the window, which was a little disconcerting.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
And I used that window to put a microphone outside in the early morning so that I could have birds chirping every time I opened the mic.
So cool.
And then the other one, which I knew about, but not many other people knew about it and were quite surprised, and it didn't get into the movie, is the former morning man, Al Spring, brought a gun to the radio station one day, and he was shooting pigeons or shooting seagulls and pigeons because they were hanging out in the window or whatever. Nobody ever got hurt or anything, but to have a gun at the radio station wasn't really the way to go. I think.
Yeah, that's a lot of eccentric people involved, or in some ways.
We're eccentrics. One story that I've told is about one of the DJs who I still have a lot of respect for, because he was his name was Keith Elshaw, and he was there in the very early days. So he was a real champion of new music. So he brought in lots of local bands. He produced local bands. He was working with the Diodes. He did a little bit of work with Teenage Head. I think maybe he worked with Martha and the Muffins. I can't remember, but he was really, really great. I heard a lot of the people that were record store importers that he would bring in and put on the air. But he had a real eccentric personality for certain things, and we used to mark up the records and we would give them little ratings. So, you play the song, we think this song's great, this song's not bad, this is a song that you shouldn't play until after 6 or avoid it altogether, not great. And we'd have these little stickers on the album, and we'd have to mark it off with a color purple would be Liz's color, green would be Ivar's, and blue would be Scott's, as an example. I'm just making that up, but that's the way it goes. Color coded. Anyway, I would come in because I was in the music department the next day, and I'd pick up the records that Keith played, and dollars to donuts every time he'd play the song that we hated the most, the song that we said do not play. Keith, that was always Keith's go-to, and that was his way of, like, even in those days, stick it to the man.
I love it. Well, that's part of the spirit that we're talking about here, I think.
Do you mind if I rewind back to the thread about David Marsden?
Sure.
I've been interested for a long time in the fact that David Marsden's name isn't quite as prominent when telling the story of the history of the band, the history of Rush. Mm-hmm. Donna Halper is given a lot of credit for her role, and she should be given the credit.
She should.
She had a very important role.
Absolutely.
I see David Marsden's role as being just as important at a different point in the arc of the career of the band, yet his name doesn't seem to be on the tips of the tongues of Rush fans, as is the case, let's say, with Donna Halper. Why do the three of you suppose that is? That his name isn't quite as celebrated? Is it a choice that David made? Is it his character to be willing to stay in the background? He knows the contribution he made.
Donna's American, isn't she?
Donna's, it's WMMS in Cleveland.
It's Cleveland, and that was the difference.
Cleveland.
I've known her well, but so my first guess at answering your question, and just my theory is, in the United States, if somebody is worthy of paying attention to, they're celebrated, they're talked about, they're promoted. It shows up in magazines and newspapers and things like that. In Canada, it's kind of like we never do that. We were not blowing our own horns back at that time. So I think that's the way our Canadian media and our industry, we're a much smaller industry. And we're very isolated in Canadian culture among radio stations and other media. When I worked in the States, I could not believe how much collaboration and exchanging of information and tipping off what song or what band was coming up. So there was much more of a cooperative, communal feeling working with American broadcasters and record labels compared to Canada.
And David is actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's two Canadians in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. One is Red Robinson, and the other is David Marsden. But I guess people don't seem to know about it as much. And
well, hopefully, the documentary then will we'll shed a little more light on his importance. Hopefully, this particular episode might cause people to shed a little more.
So we're hoping to have David come out and do an interview at Rush Day at Henderson Brewery.
Amazing.
To be part of that. I've been speaking to Steve Himmel about trying to put that together. We were going to try and do it last year, but the timing was off last year. So we'd like to try and see that. But I think I think it was when the animated video came out with David's character in that video. Of
David Calcano's Fan Tunes
video, which I thought was super respectful once that video got made. Because I quite honestly, and I don't even know how many people know this, but there was another version of that Spirit of Radio video that was made initially that was sent out. And, at the time, it was a pretty good relationship between the Canadian office at Universal Anthem Records and UME in California. And they sent it around. And I don't get too upset about too many things. And that one, I'm like going, what are you guys doing? Because that whole video was like a car driving around the hills of Los Angeles. And I'm like,
what does that have to do with
the Spirit of Radio? Like, come on. But they listened and they made it right. So water under the bridge. Or as Ricky on the Trailer Park Boys would say, water under the fridge.
Water under the fridge.
I'm sorry, Liz.
One of the things that the documentary puts out front, which I don't think many people know, is that David was super famous as a younger DJ. In fact, he was included in Marshall McLuhan's book because he spoke so many words a minute. He was famous globally, practically, for being this incredibly intense and fiercely fast kind of DJ. And he was everything cute before that time, which I guess would be the 60s.
Yeah, it seemed like it. I learned this morning, and I read a bunch of quotes, and it was like, this is well before hip hop, but I mean,
Way
wow. I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to say, to add to that, to what Liz is saying, in the documentary, there's Geddy talking about going to see Dave Mickey at the Dufferin Drive-In. And there was actually a time when, he was a superstar, DJ, top 40 DJ that talked a mile a minute. And there he is, introducing the film before the movie at a Dufferin Drive-In. But, to go back kind of that point, and David Marsden. So I think, when we saw these early cuts of the documentary, we started to look at it going, wow, this is also an homage to David, and in a good way.
Cool.
And so that's great. But just to go back to what Liz was saying, I think that is, a bit of a Canadian thing where we don't celebrate enough, and nobody does it. I used to say nobody does a parade, nobody does a party or a celebration like the Americans. And so we could learn from that a little bit, right?
Go Bills.
Go Bills, right.
Go Bills. And Sabres had such a great season too. That was
yes, indeed.
Wonderful.
But, another thing too, which maybe ties into this Spirit of Radio, is a Rush song, and CFNY named that, used that positioning statement after the Rush song, and people not knowing that story is like, I didn't start at CFNY till 84. So when I listened to the station all those earlier years, I don't remember once the station boasting and having an on-air campaign saying, this song is about us, and bragging. That wasn't.
It was never done. It was never done.
And that's David, I think, too. He didn't want to boast, and he was very respectful of the other stations, didn't want to shove it in their face, Q107, fuck you, this song's about us.
Right.
So David was very good that way. And so maybe that's where some of the story that people didn't know that the station was the subject of that song. So maybe that's part of it.
I mean, it's been us being more humble, I think.
Well, I was going to say,
an exercise in humility for sure.
Yeah, it's very commendable to have that. What you're saying about the U.S., it can come across as blatant arrogance, right? I mean, I appreciate the humility and kind of letting things get out there organically instead of blowing your own horn all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if we get back to Donna, I mean, quite honestly, MMS and playing Working Men, that opened the doors for Mercury Records and opened up their career for, where it went in America. And they couldn't have just, the Tragically Hip had their living primarily off of Canada.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure in that time frame where Rush was in the 70s that it wouldn't have gotten them, would have gotten them out of the bars into the theaters and maybe a few, Maple Leaf Garden shows or whatever along the way. But America was a necessity at the time for to break open wide, and then of course that helped open them up globally too.
Yeah, internationally.
The three of you have taken this documentary on a tour throughout Canada.
Yeah.
Yes.
How vast was that tour? How many particular shows did you host?
We started in Toronto. We went to Montreal, which was quite interesting to be in a market that the main language being French.
Yeah.
We got reviews of the film in French, so that was really interesting. We were in Oshawa, we were in Kitchener, Guelph, and Brampton is coming up on the 6th of June. But the big one that was kind of like the left of center was we were in Vancouver on the 25th of April to go travel out to all the way to the other side of the country. And it was a really great experience out there. The theater was fantastic. The sound system was great. And we had Bruce Allen show up. And to have Bruce Allen, like people are going, are you kidding me? Bruce Allen's coming tonight? Because Bruce Allen's rock and roll royalty, the other rock and roll royalty in the country outside of Russia is Bruce Allen, right? For his management with Bryan Adams and Bachman Turner Overdrive and what have you. So we had some, it was really, really, really great. So
and the feedback from this Canadian tour from the audience, not just.
I'm going to let Liz and Scott jump into that because I've been saying too much here. I got to give some openness to my counterparts.
I hope you've received only great feedback. I'll echo Jeff's question. Throughout this tour, I hope you received only great, positive, glowing feedback from all the people who've participated. What have you heard?
There's two levels of feedback. There was the feedback on the 60-minute version.
Yeah.
Where there was quite a bit of criticism about what was left out of the movie. But when the 90-minute version is now being screened, they absolutely love it. And they laugh, they clap when they see their favorite personalities, they ask questions, they come for hugs. And I'm thinking I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about this. There was a magical quality with that station that even after all these years, and I'm thinking more than 40 years, sorry to say that out loud, people still have such a passion for what that community, it wasn't just the station, it was the bond between the station and the people, the musicians and the comedians and the dancers and the theater people. We were part of Toronto. Even our news department was the same size as the major news talk station in the market. So we had such a bond. And these people were just giving back that love. Like, we didn't see them that often. You're alone in a room talking to yourself, which I still do, by the way. And then just to be in the presence of these people and the joy to know how much they love that station I feel so blessed to have had this experience of touring with the lads and showing the movie.
How cool.
The sincerity of that love. I feel the sincerity of that love coming off the screen here, Liz.
Yeah.
I feel that. Scott, what about yourself?
Yeah, just having it shown in a theater, that's always, you can't compare, that experience of other people in the room, seeing the same scenes, laughing, as Liz said, laughing. And that was the thing we didn't know. We saw all these cuts and all kinds of edits. And we had lots of fights and arguments about this piece and take that out, put that in, so on and so forth. And you get so deep in it, you just don't know. Are they going to react to this? Are they going to react to that? So that's one of the joys of seeing people laugh at the part. Oh my God, they laughed at that. And they got that one. And that was a surprise. And it turned out better than we thought. And originally one of the struggles is you just don't know, especially today, people's attention span.
Right.
And so we had a version that was an hour and a half long. And we got feedback from people that were like, yeah, this is a bit jumbled, guys, and we were fighting because it's too long and all that. And then there was this TV Ontario cut that was an hour, and we thought, wow, this is actually pretty good, nice and clean. It's an hour, that'll be perfect. People, just enough. And if you went, further, people wouldn't like it. And of course, the people were like, we want more.
Yeah, it's
we
too
want
short.
More. It's too short. It's too short. And we're like, oh, geez.
You need Pete and Geese.
You had to have Pete and Geese. I will say this. So Scott just mentioned the different versions that we had. And
yes.
So out of nowhere, we get a text or a email from the director and said, actually, no, it wasn't from the director. I get it from a buddy of mine over at the Bridge here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
He goes, do you know that your documentary's been accepted into the Buffalo Film Festival? And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Right? And so we heard about that. And then about a week later, it's like, yeah, you've been accepted into the Woodstock Film Festival.
Amazing.
Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we heard about two more. There was like, I think Oakville, and there was one other one out west or something. But we hated that version of the film. And it was like, okay, we're not coming. We're like, as we go, please come out, be part of the panel. I said, I'm sorry, we're not going to be there. We are not going to take part in this film unless we get it right. And we were so adamant about like making changes to do the right things for certain people, and that we're not playing politics at all. It's just telling the story right,
Yeah.
and from our heart, and what we believed in was right, and things that just were going off, and it was like, no, you can't do this. And so we had never spoken to the higher ups at the film company. For some reason, we just didn't. And finally, Alan Cross picked up the phone and called the film company and said, we can't accept this version of the film. We can't do these things. That, as much as we would have loved to be in the Buffalo Film Festival, because it would have been amazing. I said, but it's not what we... it's not what we feel is acceptable. So the film company woke up and said, well, we're not putting out the film unless you guys like it, unless you feel it's
Amazing.
good. And
that's
was
great.
And I know that there's plenty of other examples in the film business where it's like, that's the way it is, people.
Yeah.
So we were very fortunate to have that relationship that we, now we're very tight with them, and they consult with us on everything, which is fantastic.
Yeah, to set that precedent. Good for Alan. Good for your team to stand up. I think that's called integrity.
It sounds very much like a CFNY kind of thing to do.
Yeah, it sounds like that move was in lockstep with the theme that you've shared here, that the station represented.
Yeah. And then Scott and I were the amateur directors, and we had a bunch of changes that we wanted to make, and then we got schooled by some outside film people that said, just let it go, guys. Just let it go.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So, on that note, so Ira and I were sort of the super picky ones on little minute details that we later learned in film sometimes that don't worry, no one's going to notice. And anyway, well, but speaking of Rush, the first Rush album, Ivor, remember?
Oh, yes.
Tell that story.
So I said, so they put, we were the first people to, the first to play Rush, or David was the first people to play Rush. And so up on the screen goes the U.S. cover of the first Rush album. And I'm like, no. It has to be the Canadian album. It's a different shade of red. It has to be up there. And I'm like, this has to happen. And then the film company, it's all a CGI and these things. This is just one that we can't do, right? And there we were at the film premiere. All of Rush's team were at the film premiere, the building. I said, they are going to lose their friggin' minds. They are going to crucify me for this. All they said at the end was, what a great film. Thanks a lot. Nobody ever said a thing, but it was addressed.
I love your attention to detail and knowing it's got to be that.
I love that you care.
Yes.
I cared so much.
Yes.
I gave them shit recently, too. They just put out that reissue.
Correct.
Again, reissue of the first album. I was like, why is this not on Moon Records?
Correct.
Well, we talked about it, but we just decided not to. And I'm like, I wouldn't have done it that way, but I don't work there, so it's not up to me anymore.
Yeah. Well, and the other funny part about it, and I didn't know myself about those differences, that slight difference. It's the same cover. It's just a slightly different, tone of red.
Somebody screwed up in the U.S. at the printing plant originally, and that's just the way that it stood.
It's part of Rush lore now.
And the original should have been represented.
You put a Canadian copy of the first Rush album and a U.S. one, it's two different shades of red.
No question.
There you go.
I felt your passion there. I respect it. Much like I felt Liz's
that's where the
love and
nerd
authenticity
part comes in with some Rush fans, right? Sometimes you say, I'm a Rush fan, I'm a bit of a nerd too, right?
A bit of a nerd and an obsessive.
Yeah.
Oh, when I have to tell you a story about when I was programming Sirius Satellite, the Iceberg channel, all Canadian music channel. One of my announcers was called Freeway Frank. And he was a rabid Rush fan. So every hour of his show, he got to choose one song and tell the story of it. So every hour was Rush Hour with Freeway Frank.
Wow.
He was great.
Okay, we'll have him on the next episode.
Yeah, we got to track him down.
I know too. In the early days of CFNY, sometimes we weren't so good on our CanCon because we were a free-form radio station,
Right.
and we had to play our CanCon, but some of the DJs were negligent in getting their CanCon in. But I do recall this one of the DJs, because I got it down. Don't worry about it, Ivor. I'll get the CanCon, because I was in the music department. It's like he just puts on 2112, and there's that one, the one track that's in. Ray, what is it? 7 parts or whatever?
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
That counts as 7 Canadian content
That's
songs.
right.
So that he'd be rolling it just up to midnight, and there he got his CanCon.
There's
There we go.
your
Now,
CanCon
the Rush would
quota.
have got played anyway, but that was just an example.
Yeah, 2112 is 7 chapters.
There
the
you go.
Hemispheres only has 6, so better for him to
Yeah,
choose.
they were
20.
learning
21.
gravity.
Yes. Holy cow! What have we, Jeff? What have we not covered here?
No, this is amazing, and I mean, I'd just like to say thank you for for the documentary, but also for what CFNY meant to me, and I know what meant to our city, my adopted city. And it's really cool to see that you guys are all like such cool and passionate people, and it came through.
Yeah, clearly the spirit that the station represented, you can feel that same spirit within the three of you.
Yeah, definitely. And I hear, and it traveled, like I hear it now in a station like KEXP out of Seattle.
Yes.
Reminds me of this, like very passionate, educated DJs who really seem to have a stake in what they're playing. Like they care and they know what the fuck they're talking about. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a CFNY legacy,
One of the other legacies about the station which occurred to me just the other day, we just didn't play tracks. We created landscapes with each set of music that
Absolutely.
Well spoken.
Yeah, with the hills and valleys, right? That David always used to say, let's do the hills and valleys, and how you create that, and it becomes almost one song in a 20-minute set.
Yeah, it felt curated, like carefully curated.
Oh, do we
One
end with
thing
the
I'll add
Go ahead,
is-
Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, here we are. It's 2026, and the spirit of radio era of CFNY is long past us.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that when I go to other places, other countries, and I run into people and just having a conversation, and they say, "What did you do?" I'm retired now. What did you do? And I said, "Well, I worked in radio," and all of a sudden, because of how big Rush has become, and you could argue today they're bigger than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Is that I've got this great story and connection, because it's usually, I worked in the station in Toronto, and I go, you heard of the band Rush? Oh yeah, Rush, yeah, I love Rush, yeah, great, great live band, yeah, okay. The song Spirit of Radio? Oh yeah, Spirit of Radio. I worked at the station that song was written for.
It's
There we go.
about
All of a
us.
sudden,
Oh.
now I'm famous.
Now you get interest.
Now you get
Just
interest.
come back in another episode. I can tell you my international Rush stories. Now, you guys on the tour, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go see shows? Have you got any of that nailed down?
Cleveland is
Cleveland?
all I know for sure, because that's all I have tickets for. Yeah. But
okay.
I'm not finished.
Well, I'm not going to. I'm going
Right?
to be in many multiple cities. It increased since Jeff and I have recorded episodes. I know I'm not going to be in Krakow, Poland, if that's where you're going.
I was
with
just
this
seeing
story.
if you were crossing the Atlantic.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, I'd be crossing the Atlantic, quite possibly. I'll just leave it at that. But I'm not sure if I'll be in Poland.
We've added Switzerland
Excellent.
to our journey, so we're going to do Krakow and the one in Switzerland.
You
as
and
well.
Alan.
Alan Cross and I are going. Yes.
Mhm.
So
I'll be in.
The ongoing history of new music is ongoing.
Indeed. Holy cow. Let's say Scott Turner, congratulations on the documentary.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us. Liz Janik, congratulations on the documentary. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time.
And your
Ivar
spirit,
Hamilton.
for sure.
Congratulations on the documentary.
thank you.
Thank you for traveling to be with Jeff and I here today.
It's my pleasure.
Congratulations to you so much. We encourage all Rush fans to give their attention to this great documentary.
And here in Buffalo, absolutely. When this happens at the town ballroom, right across the street from where we are recording right now here in the studio, we should all be there and celebrate that connection between CFNY and Buffalo, because
It's pretty important. We
It's
had some
real.
great times. The Continental, the Library, the Pleasure Dome,
Club Exit.
Club Exit, Gord's Place, the Aqueduct, all these places that were connected to Buffalo. We love Buffalo, and we want to be here for you guys.
Excellent. Well, let's send some love back. So join us. That will be in August, and we'll certainly let you know when the rescheduled date is in concrete.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys.
Great. Thank you
really
all.
cool to
Guys.
spend time with you.
Thank you.
You
Peace to you
too.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.